jump into the demo here. So Clone Commander is fully integrated with Dynamics for Finance and Operations. It's an add-in into the product. The UI is accessed through the system administration section of the menu. You need to be an administrator to do this because there is quite a, obviously the actions you're going to be taking could have a detrimental effect on your data. So you need to know exactly what you're doing. You come into the Rise Clone Commander section over here, and we've got two screens, the parameter screen and the configuration screen. Our recipes or our sort of collection of steps or rules that obfuscate your data for you, that you can build to your heart's content, are essentially named configurations, and the parameters screen is where we set up our environments, which I'll go to right at the end once I've given you a bit of an overview of exactly what the product does. If I click into configurations here, it's a nice simple little screen. The process here that I'm going to show you is one of when a end user would build a new configuration or a set of steps for an action they would like to take to clean up some of their data or hide some data. So I'll show you how to set up a new configuration, and then I'll also talk a bit about how you move that data into production for the next time you do the restore. So I can click on the new button here. The default status is created when things run at various stages. The statuses change accordingly. One of the big sort of features we have is the run at startup feature. If I select this checkbox, what will happen is the next time you do a restoration of your production database into a lower environment, it'll automatically run this set of steps for you and change that data for you, so you don't have to remember to do it. It means that there's no manual steps that needs to be executed when someone starts up their environment. So if you restore to a developer's machine, they don't have to remember to do it. They don't have an opportunity to maybe copy some data that they want to get some malicious access to before even starting. So it runs automatically, and then by the time the AOS comes up, the data is already changed. So I can give it a name here. I'm just going to call this scramble phone numbers. Nice simple example just for the demo. You do need to select a target environment. So I'll show you how you set these up in a minute, but you basically have to set up all your environments in your organization, ones that you would like to target for restoration. So which environments are going to have their database restored from production. In this case, I'm going to select this machine, which is test. Now, obviously, I'm busy building these configurations in a lower environment. You won't do this in production because you can't test it. You'll end up blowing away all your data. So the flow is that you do this in a lower environment. You select the company you want to target. You can give some notes here. Scramble all mobile phone numbers. And I can save that, and you get your auditability is here of who changed it, when and where. The next time it actually executes, it'll get a last execution date. And there's a couple other little sort of functions you can use up here, but I'll come back to these in a minute. What I first want to show you is the steps on where the actual logic happens. So I'll jump into the steps here, and you'll see the step screen. In the screen, you can configure the logic essentially that you want to have execute when the restoration is done. So I'm going to set up a very simple step. You could have as many steps as you want. You can skip these steps while you're busy testing. Every time the configuration is either executed or validated, it gets a status to show you whether it's successful or not. I'll show you that in a minute. But initially, I'm going to select a table. So in this particular case, I want to just stick electronic address, which is the table that holds all the electronic communication records in F&O. So your email addresses, your phone numbers, all contained within this table. That's kind of an interesting use case because you have to target specifically the phone numbers. And the field that we want to access is the locator field. So depending on whether the record is an email address or a phone number, the value goes into this locator field, and then the format of this field changes based on the type. But I'll get into that in a sec. So I can then save that step. you can go into the processing section, and this is really where you can do a lot of different things. This is where sort of the action happens. You could, in this case, I want to scramble the phone numbers, but I could just set all the phone numbers to be 99999, and then therefore when the database is restored, that developer who could potentially be at a third party or offshore won't have access to your customers' phone numbers. But in this case, I'm going to change it to be a function. We've got a couple of functions here. We've got assign, concatenate, substitute, and randomize. Assign, you can basically copy it from another field in the same table. You can also concatenate. So if I wanted to, I could put some value before and at the end of the value in the table. But in our case here, we're going to randomize it. We could have also substituted. So we've also got an option here to substitute, where you can basically, maybe you find a specific value in the string and then change it. That's very good for the example Stephen mentioned a bit earlier around integrations. 9 times out of 10 these days, integrations are happening via a URL. And oftentimes the environment name is in the URL. So you could go find that URL and find the word production in it and change it to test or something like that. So it's a very useful little function there. But in our case, we just want to randomize phone numbers. Phone numbers are, we'll make it a length of 10, and we're just going to use numbers. We could have also used characters, depending on what the data type is of the field. We could also, we don't by default call a modified field. So in this case, it would be the modified field for locator, which would execute the business logic. So we turn that off by default, but we do run the update method by default. And I'm going to leave that on, because it'll give you a bit of an understanding on what happens when things fail. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And you'll see a bit further down in the screen, you've also got a conditions screen where you can build essentially like a where clause to filter the records you want to focus on. In our case, I'll add one in a second because we want to focus on phone numbers. But for the moment, I'm going to leave it blank because I want to show you what it looks like when you get some information back about it failing. I'm going to validate this. So what this does is it tries to apply your rules, but it rolls it back once it's complete. So it doesn't commit the change, but it does give you some very helpful information on whether it would have been successful if you were to execute it. So in this particular use case that I'm showing you right now, I'm building a new step. So this is something that the end user will do. They'll come in and create their rules and their steps here, and start building it and validating it and start getting some feedback from the system on exactly what's going on. And you can see here, because I haven't added that where clause, I essentially focused on the entire table, which had 1,645 rows in it. However, we only want to focus on phone numbers. So, I do really need a type in there. So I can see the error message nice and clearly coming back in the info log. And it's also telling me that, I can't randomize certain rows in the table because not all of them are phone numbers. Some of them are email addresses. So there's some business logic running on that update method, and it's telling me that. But it's all good because this was rolled back. I only validated. So this didn't happen in the system yet. Okay, now if I go scroll a bit further down, you can see that every single execution, we've got 2 types of execution, validations or actual executions. They get logged. You can always retrieve the info log again. We've got a status and whether it succeeded or failed. So if I hit the info log, it'll bring it up again for me, and I can look at that info log. So that's very important for when we run this for real on startup, as an example. When the rules run or the configurations run, you can go in and see why it failed or if it failed, and recall the info log messages and see why and get some information on, and then start troubleshooting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm now going to add a conditions. So I want to focus on, we saw in that error message, the type needs to be filled in. So I'm going to add type equals phone here. And this conditions builder is essentially building a query range in the background for the people on the call that know X++ and have done some development. We allow you to build some pretty complex conditions. You could also add another line, and we've got an and or an or operator. Gets you sort of 95% of the way there with most of your scenarios that you need. So I'm going to validate this again, and now we should if everything is going well on my demo, you should see it succeed. And we can see what that looks like. I'll give it a minute here. You can see now it's a nice blue banner. And if I go in, you can see that it succeeded, or it would have succeeded because it didn't commit. And it affected 973 rows this time, not 1,675 like I did earlier. So we know that our where clause is working, and it would have succeeded. But my real requirement is actually to focus on mobile phone numbers. So I can go back in here again and then add in another condition. And we should get another line. I can put is mobile over here, is mobile phone. Luckily, Microsoft keep a nice, simple way for me to identify mobile phones, and I don't have to do anything too crazy. And I can go run this again now, and it'll just focus on mobile phones. So yeah, you can see that, you see the rows affected was 0 on the first run because it failed. The second one would have affected 973 rows, and this one should be far less because there's not that many mobile phone numbers in the system right now. Yeah, so that should succeed, and then we should see execution number 3, and we can see the rows affected was only 4, and we can drill down into the info log and get some more information about it. So at this point, I've built a configuration with my steps in it that would update all my mobile phones and scramble them to some crazy number that no one really can do anything with. So at this point, I'm happy. I can go back to the configuration screen, and I can do a number of things now. Now, typically what would happen is, I could build off of this. I could copy this configuration now that I know it works and maybe tweak it and change it, focus on a different environment or a different company. I can also run those execute and validate steps directly from here, or I can drill down into the log, and you can see the more detail on what's happened. So that's more applicable for when it's running for real, but you can drill down into the logs from here. So what the user would do at this point, once they've built and validated their logic and they're happy with it, they would export it to XML. So we have this little export function here, and you can see that it creates an XML in my downloads folder called the configurations 11. And then what I would do is I'd then log into production. So I'm not going to do that, obviously, but let's pretend that I logged into my production environment. I would then come in and I would say import, and I would then import that file into my production environment. And then I'd leave it at that. And then the next time I restore my production environment to a lower environment, in this case, we're targeting test, it would run on startup and then obfuscate those or scramble those phone numbers for me automatically. And that's obviously one of our main features. Okay, so there's probably a couple of little questions you may ask here. Things like, well, if I can do these rules in my lower environment, what's stopping me doing it in production? So we've put quite a lot of thought into that. So let me jump into the parameters screen over here. In the parameters screen is where you build or basically set up your environments in your organization. In this case, I just have 3. I have my dev environment and my test environment, which I'm currently working in. But you have to specify a production environment. So you can't actually use the product. You won't be able to create configurations until you come in here, create a record, and give it the flag to say that it's production. And that's how we prevent people from running these rules by accident in production and messing up their data. Okay, and I think that's a nice quick whip through of the product. I don't know if we